Men are often told that the secret to better intimacy is simple: last longer. But what if that advice is completely backwards? Because a man can last 20 minutes and still leave his partner feeling like something was missing. And another man can spend far less time, but understand position, comfort, communication, and arousal, and create a much better experience. That's the part nobody teaches you. And today I'm going to explain 4 positioning principles that can make intimacy more comfortable, more connected, and potentially more satisfying for both partners. But there's a catch. The first one has almost nothing to do with duration. It has to do with control. I'm Dr. Claire Morgan, and if you've ever wondered why changing position sometimes makes an enormous difference, and other times seems to do absolutely nothing, you need to understand what is happening underneath the surface. Because female sexual response isn't controlled by one switch. It's influenced by blood flow, nerves, muscle tension, psychological safety, arousal level, communication, and individual anatomy. And once you understand that, the entire conversation changes. Angle number 1, the control principle. Here's the first mistake many couples make. They assume that a particular position is automatically better because someone online said it was. But there is no universal perfect position. Why? Because women aren't anatomically identical. The angle that feels comfortable and stimulating for one woman may feel completely different for another. That's why the first principle isn't about finding some magical position. It's about finding a position where she can communicate and influence what's happening. Think about it. If one partner is completely passive and afraid to say, slower, that's better, move slightly, or stay there, then even the most technically perfect positioning becomes irrelevant. But when she has a sense of control, everything changes. She can adjust her body, she can communicate, she can respond to what feels comfortable, and that can reduce the pressure on both partners. Here's the surprising part. Giving her more control can actually help you last longer. Why? Because you're no longer trying to guess what she wants, while simultaneously worrying about your own performance. You're responding instead of performing. And that difference can dramatically change the psychological pressure surrounding intimacy. But control is only half the story, because there's another factor that can completely change how a position feels: angle. And most couples never think about it. Angle number 2, the alignment principle. When people talk about intimacy, they often focus on movement, but alignment can matter just as much. Small changes in body position can change pressure, comfort, muscle tension, and the way different areas of the body are stimulated. And this is where many men make a surprisingly common mistake. They assume more intensity, better experience. Not necessarily. Sometimes more intensity simply means more discomfort. And when discomfort enters the picture, the body's response can change quickly. Muscles may tighten, arousal can drop, attention shifts away from pleasure and toward managing discomfort. That's why good positioning isn't about forcing more sensation. It's about finding an alignment that feels natural and sustainable for both people. And there's another reason this matters. The female sexual response is heavily influenced by the brain. If she's thinking, is this going to hurt? Am I comfortable? Should I say something? Does he know this isn't working? Her attention isn't fully focused on pleasure. So sometimes the most powerful change isn't doing more. It's simply making the experience more comfortable. And here's where things get even more interesting. Because even perfect alignment can fail if you ignore one critical variable: arousal. Angle number 3, the arousal principle. Imagine trying to sprint without warming up. Your body technically can do it, but it isn't prepared for maximum performance. Sexual response works differently, but the principle is similar. The body generally needs time to transition into a state of heightened arousal. Blood flow increases, heart rate changes, muscle tension changes, sensitivity can increase, and the brain becomes more focused on sexual stimuli. This is why rushing directly into the main event can be counterproductive. For many women, arousal takes longer to build. And if you constantly change positions before that arousal has developed, you may actually interrupt the process. So instead of asking, what's the best position? A better question is her body actually ready for this position? That's a completely different way of thinking. And it explains why the same position can feel incredible at one moment and completely ordinary at another. The position didn't magically change. Her level of arousal changed. And this is something men often overlook. They focus on technique while ignoring timing. But timing can be just as important. The biggest mistake? Here's something I want every man watching this to remember. Stop treating intimacy like a performance test. If you're constantly thinking, am I lasting long enough? Is she enjoying this? Am I doing this correctly? What position should I try next? You can become so focused on performance that you stop paying attention to your partner. And ironically, that pressure can make it harder to stay relaxed and present. Instead, watch her responses. Listen to what she says. Ask simple questions. Pay attention to whether she's comfortable. And don't assume silence means everything is perfect. Communication doesn't have to destroy the mood. Done naturally, it can actually make couples more connected. A simple, "Is this comfortable?" can tell you more than 100 internet techniques. But there's still one major piece missing. Because even if you understand control, alignment, and arousal, there is a fourth principle that determines whether all three actually work together. And this one has less to do with your body than you might think. It's about connection. That's where we're going next. Now let's get to the part most couples overlook. Because knowing that position matters is one thing. Knowing why certain angles feel better for different couples is something completely different. And this is where many men make the same mistake. They think the goal is to move faster, go deeper, or simply last longer. But intimacy isn't a race. The real goal is control, comfort, communication, and consistent stimulation. And once you understand that, these four angles make a lot more sense. Angle 3, the control angle. Here's something most men don't realize. Sometimes less movement creates more sensation. When one partner has more control over the pace and movement, it can make the experience easier to adjust moment by moment. And that matters because every woman responds differently. What feels great for one woman may feel uncomfortable for another. So instead of assuming you already know what works, pay attention to her reactions. Is she relaxing? Is she moving closer? Is her breathing changing? Does she seem more engaged? Those signals can tell you far more than simply trying to increase intensity. And here's the micro hook. If you're constantly trying to do more, you may actually be giving her less. Control beats speed, awareness beats guessing. And communication beats trying to imitate something you've seen online. The biggest mistake men make? There's another reason some men struggle to last as long as they'd like. They focus entirely on the physical sensations they're experiencing. The more they think, "Don't finish yet. Don't lose control. I have to last longer," the more tense they become. And tension can make control harder. Instead, shift your attention toward the overall experience. Slow your breathing. Relax your shoulders. Stay present. And don't treat every moment as if you have to maintain maximum intensity. Think of intimacy more like a dimmer switch than an on-off switch. You can increase intensity. You can decrease it. You can pause. You can change rhythm. You can reconnect. That flexibility is one of the most underrated skills a man can develop. At angle 4, the connection angle, and now we come to the fourth angle. This one isn't really about geometry at all. It's about connection. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. A man can know every supposed secret technique on the internet and still have disappointing intimacy if he isn't paying attention to his partner. Her comfort matters, her preferences matter, her feedback matters. And sometimes the most effective question isn't complicated at all. Simply ask, "Does this feel good?" That's it. No guessing. No ego, no performance, just communication. And there's something surprisingly powerful about that. When a woman feels comfortable enough to communicate openly, you don't have to keep guessing what she wants. You can adjust together, and that can take enormous pressure off both partners. But there's a second secret here. Don't wait until the bedroom to learn what she likes. Talk about intimacy when you're both relaxed. Ask what she enjoys. Ask what she doesn't enjoy. Ask what makes her feel comfortable. Ask what helps her relax. These conversations may feel awkward initially, but couples who can talk openly about intimacy often have a major advantage. They aren't relying on assumptions, and assumptions are where many problems begin. The slow down principle. Now let's talk about something that sounds almost too simple. Slow down. Not necessarily everything, but the tendency to rush toward the finish line. Many men assume that stronger stimulation automatically produces a better experience. It doesn't always. Sometimes changing pace, taking a pause, or simply allowing anticipation to build can make the experience feel much more connected. And if your personal goal is to last longer, this becomes especially important. Instead of waiting until you're almost out of control, recognize your own signals earlier. Maybe your breathing changes. Maybe your muscles tense. Maybe you notice that you're becoming significantly more stimulated. That's your opportunity to adjust. Don't wait for the emergency break. Learn where the regular break is. That single change can make control much easier. And here's what nobody tells men about lasting longer. Lasting longer isn't simply about delaying orgasm. It's about having better control over arousal. Those are two different things. Imagine your arousal level like a volume dial. If you constantly push it toward maximum, eventually you have very little room to adjust. But if you learn to move between lower and higher levels of stimulation, you create more room for control. This is why relaxation, breathing, pacing, and communication can matter just as much as physical technique. And there's another benefit. You stop treating intimacy like a test. You stop thinking, am I lasting long enough? Am I performing well enough? Is she satisfied? Instead, you focus on what's actually happening between two people. That mindset shift can be incredibly important. One thing you should never know, Gore. Now, gentlemen, there's one part of this conversation that deserves serious attention. If you're consistently experiencing difficulty maintaining an erection, reaching orgasm, controlling ejaculation, or experiencing pain, don't automatically assume it's simply because you're getting older. Persistent sexual difficulties can sometimes be associated with conditions such as cardiovascular disease, diabetes, medication effects, hormonal changes, anxiety, or other health issues. Your sexual health can sometimes provide clues about your overall health. So if something has changed significantly and stays changed, talk with a qualified healthcare professional. There's absolutely no shame in that. In fact, getting evaluated early can be one of the smartest decisions you make. The real secret. So let's bring everything together. There isn't one magical angle that guarantees an orgasm. There isn't one movement that works for every woman. And there certainly isn't one universal formula for every couple. What works best is usually a combination of comfort, communication, positioning, pacing, relaxation, and attention to your partner's responses. And that's why these 4 angles aren't really 4 tricks. They're 4 ways of thinking about intimacy differently. The first teaches you to pay attention to positioning. The second reminds you that comfort and stimulation aren't necessarily about intensity. The third gives both partners more control. And the fourth brings everything back to communication and connection. But here's the part I really want you to remember. The man who pays attention will usually outperform the man who simply tries harder. Because intimacy isn't about proving how much you can do. It's about understanding the person you're with. So forget the pressure to perform, forget unrealistic expectations, forget comparing yourself to what you've seen online. Learn to communicate, learn to recognize changes in arousal, learn to slow down when necessary, and most importantly, learn what your partner actually enjoys. That's where the difference happens. If you've been struggling with intimacy, don't assume you're broken. Sometimes you don't need more intensity, you need more awareness. And if this video helped you see intimacy differently, subscribe to Means Health EX Planning channel for more evidence-based men's and relationship health information. And remember, better intimacy isn't about doing everything. It's about understanding what matters.